Welcome to another episode of the Overcome University podcast. I'm your host, Michael Allison. Today's guest is Gino. He's a veteran indie musician, singer, songwriter, producer, and performer. Hey, Gino, welcome to the show, man. It's a pleasure to have you here. I know that you've been through a good bit of adversity in your life, man, and you're here to tell us about your life. So thank you for coming on to the show, man.
Thank you for having me, Michael. I really appreciate this.
Absolutely, man. So let's hop into it, man. I was pretty fascinated by some of the things that you've accomplished throughout your life and throughout your career and trying to break it into the music industry. Can you help our audience know a little bit more about you and like what influenced you to get into the music industry?
My mom and dad were both musicians. My mom sang a lot around the house, and my dad played guitar. And at 10 years old, they bought me my first guitar. It was a Spanish guitar. Nylon string, Spanish good. And my mom wanted me to play flamenco. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll try. And then a friend of mine, when I was like 14, invited me over to his house and showed me an electric guitar.
Uh-huh.
And that changed everything. I was already listening to the radio and going, it's cool. I want to do that. So that started the trajectory.
So being someone that was introduced to music at such a young age, how was that received within like your community, within like your friends and things like that? Because I think of like a lot of kids, or I even think of my wife, right? A lot of people either get into sports, some of them get into the drama, some of them get into, different types of things like that parents may push on their kids. For you to get into music, get into guitars and things like that, how was that received within your community?
So, I think the friends that I hung out with enjoyed doing that too.
Mm-hmm.
So I formed my first band when I was 15.
Oh, wow.
And okay. I had 5 or 4 subsequent ones after that. And the funny thing is, in high school, I did get into musicals. Mm-hmm. So I was fortunate enough to be cast in a couple of leading roles. And that helped me to develop like my stage persona, or my stage presence. But I really went for it in my 20s, full on being a full-time musician and trying to make it,
Let's dive into that a little bit, because kids usually are kind of shy. They're scared to even like put themselves out there, those types of things. Where did that ambition come from?
Good question. I think I just I felt like I had a desire to share. I've always been like that. I've always wanted to share. Mm-hmm. And if I was good enough, I figured people would come, and they kind of did. So early on, I had that reinforcement that what I was trying to do was working. Mm-hmm. And then I just honed my skills more and more with, mm-hmm. As the years went by.
So, Gino, I love music, and I grew up in Jamaica, and I connected with like Bob Marley music and reggae, those types of things growing up. Yourself, when creating music, what inspired you where you felt that love, where you felt that connection in regards to your love for music initially? And then what is it now where you try to convey with your audience that's listening to your music?
So initially, I was always drawn to the human voice. Mm-hmm. So I played guitar to accompany myself, but I've always been someone that really listened to lyrics and listened to the singers. Growing up in the 60s, of course, the Beatles were one of my biggest influences. But as I got older in my teens, I really was listening to songs, how they were arranged, what was working, as far as commerciality.
All right.
Because I wanted my songs to be, received in the general public. Mm-hmm. So I started writing around 14, 15. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I was very good at that point, but that's when I started. And then I just continued to develop it more and more. But it was really the singers that really, I loved the human voice, and I loved harmonies. So I would listen for that and then try to emulate that in the songs that I created.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So Your particular type of music, I was reading here that it's a sometimes you use a combination where there's going to be like some rock, some pop, some R&B, some Latin. What inspired that particular genres in regards to like combining that with your music? Because as I think about that, they're from different parts of the world that you might identify some of these types of music.
Yes. Uh, so rock was really my foundation.
Hmm.
Okay. But as I got older, I didn't want to be pigeonholed into I'm just rock, right?
Right, right, right.
So I wanted to experiment. And my mom and dad are immigrants. My dad was from Chile. My mom is from Nicaragua, and I
Hmm.
speak fluent Spanish.
Hmm.
So there was a lot of Latin music in the house with rhythm. And I'm like, I've never written something like that. Let me try that. And that's when I wrote Crazy World.
Hmm.
And then I loved rhythm and blues, growing up. It was
Hmm.
just like, that was cool too, right?
Right.
Um, so I wanted to try my hand at that as well. So I don't want to be pigeonholed into one genre, you know. I want to be experimenting with different things as well.
Oh, beautiful, man. So I saw that your debut album was called Genealogy. What was the inspiration behind that? And can you share with our audience a little bit about what can they find on that debut album?
So yeah, genealogy is kind of a play with my name.
Uh
It's my ology.
huh.
Let's see. What had happened was I had done a lot of home recording early on when we had like the capability to record on cassette, multi-track, and 4 track or it was an 8 track cassette Tascam
Mhm,
688 it's called, and I did home recordings and then I put them aside, never released them. Years went by, and I had been performing from the time I was 15 to 30. Okay, and
mhm,
during that time I did record uh, 3 albums, well, 1 album, 2 EPs, and then my own in stuff at home. At age of 30, and I was always the front man, lead singer. Okay.
mhm,
At 30, I developed thyroid cancer,
mm,
and that actually kind of sidelined my career because it affected my voice.
mhm,
And they took the whole thing. I also got married and had kids.
mhm,
So I kind of devoted my life to being a good dad and focusing on that because the music industry can have a lot of, shall we say, influences
mhm,
that are they're, they can lead you down a path that maybe you don't want to go
mhm,
down. Um, and then when I turned 50, I was introduced to a few professional musicians that I'd looked up to,
mhm,
and they encouraged me to get back into music.
mhm,
And so I went, okay, well, I wrote a couple more songs, took the old recordings
mhm.
that I had, remastered them, and put out that album in 2017.
Oh, that's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
I want to tap into something here before we transition a little bit. But I notice whenever I look at some of the artists that are making music, some of them can make music in 1 hour, 1 day. Some of them takes weeks, sometimes months to even put out something in regards to the type of music that they're trying to produce. Can you take us into your mind when you get into your creative space in regards to creating the art that you're creating?
That's a deep question. So I get influenced by my surroundings, or a
Hmm.
thought comes in my mind. Sometimes, Michael, a whole song will just download out of nowhere.
Hmm.
Like I just have to like, what was that? Okay, write it down, hum it out. I can hear it, but many times I just grab my phone and sing into it or tap into it, keeping a beat so I don't forget it.
Mm.
I'll
Mhm.
forget things. Uh, and that allows me then to go back, kind of work out the songs. And sometimes I'll sit down with friends and we'll co write
Mhm.
together in the same room.
Mhm.
You know? So there's no one way. It's whatever happens. It's like catching lightning in a bottle. You just want to grab it away. Okay, let's not lose that. I want to get it. That's how it works for me anyway.
I got you, man. I got you. So for myself as a viewer of music, right? I just usually see the performer on stage. I know now in this day and time, obviously there's social media, there's YouTube that gives you some backstage things and everything like that. But I know that you don't get the complete backstory of some people. Sometimes you don't even get a person's background unless they put it inside of their song. Can you tell us a little bit about what are some of the challenges as a musician, as an artist, that you have personally have faced within the music industry, or that you may have seen from some of your friends that the general public may not know of, that you had to get over and get through?
In regards to exposure, and putting yourself out there, when I grew up, we had albums, and you didn't know what the artist was like. There was no such thing as videos. You had to go live to go see them, and if you were lucky enough to meet them, you'd have like a couple of minutes to meet them. For today, with social media, I have found that to be a little bit I'm happy to do it, but it's also very time consuming, creating content. So, and then, you're videotaping yourself, which is a little narcissistic, but you got to do it. And then you got to edit what you've done. And then you have to put it together. I mean, I'd rather be writing music, but I don't have a label. I'm not a signed artist. I'm an independent artist, or indie, as they call it. So I do everything myself. Marketing, the social media stuff. It's a challenge. And maybe kids coming up right now would be a lot more comfortable because that's all they've been exposed to. Right? That they grew up with that. They're literally born with it. I'm old enough to know that there was no internet. So I've had to adapt and learn. But because I had most of my career, I was also in sales. My day job was in sales. I learned to overcome and how to find solutions to whatever challenge I had in front of me. So I've always had that positive mindset. Figure out what you need to do, learn it. And I've taken multiple classes actually on, promoting yourself, how algorithms work, how to get SEO to your website. I mean, it's a lot. Well, because the record labels used to do all that for you, right?
Right.
Now you got to do it yourself. So it's a big learning curve. For people my age, they're like, I don't want to do that, man. Forget it. But for younger kids, they get it. They know how to do it. And, God bless them. They have the opportunities that we didn't have when we were growing up.
Exactly. So Gene, how does one in the music industry have that balance in regards to managing your career, where if you're in the music industry, most likely you're going to have to travel, most likely you're going to have to rehearse, and now you got to balance wife, kids, vacation, all these different things and stuff like that. How did you manage that and incorporate these things into like your professional career?
Good question. I think going into a relationship, let's say, got to be authentic and let them know, this is what I do. This is who I am. You get the whole package, which includes traveling, which includes maybe attention that would otherwise be, threatening to a relationship, what I'm talking about. Those things are part of the package. That's part of what you get with me, right? But I've also learned how to value boundaries and knowing where to put my time and focus. Because you can do both. It is a balance, though. You don't want to put other things aside that are more important, that are going to be there for you always, rather than a fleeting thing that might come or go,
Right.
you
Right.
know? So understanding what's valuable in your life and ensuring that you protect that is what I try to do.
Wow. That's good message in regards to like what you've been through. For our listeners that's listening
Mm.
and they're thinking about getting into the music industry, obviously the way you started to where we're at now is a little bit different. What advice would you give to a listener that's saying, "Hey, I want to get into the music industry. I'm not sure how I should break through or what I should even do." What advice would you give that listener that's listening to this podcast?
The best thing to do, and this is probably true not just in the music, but in any career, is to find a good mentor,
Hmm.
someone who has been there. And you also need to be coachable. Um, a lot of musicians have egos, which is cool. That's kind of part of it. But when you're learning, you need to be open to constructive criticism
Hmm.
and not take it personally and learn from your mistakes. You got to listen to what you're doing. I highly recommend you record your rehearsals so that you can listen back and go, oh, okay, this needs to be tightened up or
Hmm.
whatever. Um, if you're a singer, take voice lessons. If you're a guitarist, take guitar lessons, keyboard lessons, whatever. Get good at your craft first, and then engage in trying to make something happen, either as a solo artist or in a band. And in a band, it's like a marriage. You got to give and take. It's multiple relationships in one. But for me, like, I had bands. I had 5 bands, right? I loved that. I loved the camaraderie and the traveling together, which that was a whole different conversation. But um, then as I got older, I was like, let me try this thing solo.
Hmm.
Then I could do what I wanted without having to compromise
Hmm.
and choose who I wanted to work with, how my production was going to sound, and things like that.
Hmm.
So that's what I've done since. These other band stuff happened mostly in the 80s.
Hmm. Let's expound on that a little bit because I think that's a an interesting piece where a listener should take some more away from your story because I think of being in a band opposed to going solo is kind of like a sport where being in a band is just like a football team where there's different players, everybody know their role, everybody knows their position. And when
Yeah.
you're going solo, it's kind of like you're a swimmer, maybe you might be a track star, you may be a golfer, where those are kind of like individual sports where you have to perform at your best and do those things at your best. Can you talk a little bit about the difference with that and what was your mindset in regards to saying, hey, when I'm in a band, this is what I need to do. When I'm operating solo, this is what I need to do.
So, okay, great. I always took a leadership role in the bands I was in.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of defaults to the lead singer,
Mm-hmm.
but I also had a business background, right?
All right.
Sales. So I would be booking the shows. I'd be collecting the money, doing the promotional flyers for the most part. Um, Working cohesively with a group, you really have to trust each other and respect the way that you're working together, but you really have to set up those boundaries of what is going to be productive and what's not going to be productive.
Mm-hmm.
Then having the desire to go solo, it's really all on you then. So I think that to go solo, you really have to have confidence in yourself
Mm-hmm.
and your abilities, and not just listening to family members or friends. Oh yeah, that sounds great. They're going to say that anyway.
Right, right.
It's really going out there and putting yourself out there. Whether you go to a coffee shop and just do a couple of songs in front of strangers, or you take a big bite and open up for somebody, first time, that could be daunting, but baby steps, just to build up your confidence and your repertoire to go solo. I've enjoyed going solo. It's it's a lot of work to be in a band. It really is. Uh, and you do have to compromise a lot. That's the thing. There's a lot of compromising. And I didn't want to compromise anymore.
I got you, man. I love it. Thank you for that, man. I uh I like to I like to find time to like decompress whenever I'm not working, I'm not in action, and I just want to chill out. For you as a musician that's always performing and you have like people cheering for you and all of these different types of things, do you ever find time where you say like, okay, Gene, I need to meditate, do some visualization, or anything like that to recharge and reboost or anything like that? Do you incorporate anything into your lifestyle or your practice before coming on stage and performing?
Yes, meditation,
Mhm.
absolutely. I do things like listening to meditation tracks. I actually join a weekly meditation group online.
Mhm.
Uh, I listen to the crystal sound bowls to align my chakras. I'm
Mhm.
very much into that stuff.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think it's important to be grounded.
Mhm.
When you're on stage, you're really lifting up your energy.
Mhm.
And that energy is an exchange between you and the audience.
Right.
It's not just you putting it out. It's really an exchange.
Mhm.
And some people can get kind of taken away with that. So you really have to ground yourself and do a little meditation, a little prayer, whatever you want to call it, before you get on stage, so you're prepared for that onslaught of energy. You really feel it. It's not a mystery. We all, like, when you walk in a room, you can tell if the energy's cool or if it's like, ooh, this feels bad. You really feel energy, and that's the cool part about the whole being an entertainer, is exchanging that energy
Mhm.
with an audience. So
Mhm.
yeah, being grounded is really important.
I love it. I've been to quite a few different concerts, and you could see how the performers are really like feeding off of that in regards to like you hear the crowd get louder. You'll see that the even the guys that's performing will start doing even more things, probably things they probably didn't even like choreographed or anything like that
Mhm.
because of the energy that they're getting from the audience. I really do love that. I, I want to talk to you about the business aspect of being in the music industry because sometimes people think that it's just performing and you're just out there on the stage, but there's behind the scenes things that some people do not know about. Can you talk a little bit about what is it like behind the scenes and operating and running the career as a musician, as a business owner as well too?
I think it's a little easier for me because I do have a business background. For majority of musicians, they're very sensitive and maybe don't have that kind of background, so they have to rely on other people. Um, this is not an industry for the faint of heart.
Hmm.
There's a lot of disappointment, and you have to be aware of the people you surround yourself with.
Hmm.
You have to trust them and put your trust in them.
Hmm.
But unfortunately, in this industry, there's a lot of people that take advantage of
Hmm.
naive new artists. I speak from my own perspective as I'm older, but in my 20s, man, there were things that happened that I won't even talk about that were just, uh, you know, they weren't conducive to success.
Hmm.
Let's put it that way. And we were led down a lot of paths that didn't work out. So you have to be really strong in character and set boundaries. This is what I want to do. This is how I want to get there, and find people that can help you do that. Um, if you're a signed artist, a record label does everything. And basically, it's not anything glamorous. You sign a deal, you sign away all your publishing, the record company gets it all, and they give you a salary and expect you to go out, work your butt off, and pay them back, right? That's it. But you've signed away your music
Right.
as far as publishing goes.
Hmm.
The songs have two sides, the songwriter and the publisher,
Hmm.
and that's how songs get paid. Um, Learning the music industry. Now, today, there's books out there that you can learn how this industry works. I highly recommend anybody getting into it, find a good book
Mm-hmm.
that tells you about the music industry, learn about contracts,
Mm-hmm.
learn about expectations and all that so that you're prepared, just like anything. You're not going to go out and go hunting without learning how to, handle a firearm or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
same thing.
Man, thank you for sharing that. Another aspect someone recently had brought to my attention was the insurance aspect of being a musician. And they brought it to me from the aspect of I'm always performing, I'm always on stage, and sometimes I may lose my voice, and sometimes I cannot perform, and I'm dealing with some of these things. And they were saying that it's important for a musician to also have speech insurance or voice insurance, which I've never even heard of. but they were telling me all about those things. Can you talk a little bit about, or you could add to like protecting yourself, protecting your assets when getting into the music industry? Because like you said sometimes there's nuances within the contract. So can you talk a little bit about that part in regards to protecting yourself and even like your business manager side of things too as well?
Wow, that's deep. So for at least for singers, our voice is our instrument.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, you break a string and you can just replace it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Matter of fact, my voice has changed not only back when I was 30, but 2 years ago, I developed cancer on my vocal cord.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to go through radiation, and now my voice is permanently changed to what you hear now.
Right.
So I'll have to shift a little bit to adjust to that.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as protecting yourself, I've never actually heard of that either.
Mm-hmm.
But I can see that if you are a working organization, let's call it, and you're going out and exposing yourself to many different situations that could cause you harm,
Mm-hmm.
or you're on the road, you're traveling, you're in hotels, whatever, you get sick. I've had many friends who perform and they get sick and they have to cancel shows. Promoters and managers have insurance for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? As an individual artist, I guess if you're like, Taylor Swift or Beyonce, yeah. But, your typical person is not going to really need that. But God bless them if they can get to that level, sure.
Yeah, it was interesting when we was having that conversation because they're a professional speaker and that's how they make their livelihood. So they're speaking 2 to 3 times a month, and someone is paying them somewhere in the $20,000 to speak. And if they cannot speak, there's money that's involved. There's other things, and this is how they're making their livelihood. So
Yes.
that's where the conversation came in at, and I was like, that's an interesting story to learn, or part of the business to learn when you get
Yes.
into performing for people and speaking for people or singing for people, those types of things as well.
Yes, and that's a great point. Imagine you had a band, you got 5 people,
Right.
not just one person, right?
Right.
Again, in this industry, it's never consistent
Mm-hmm.
as far as agreements.
Mm-hmm.
One club can just be a handshake, and there's no real formal agreement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Musicians just want to play; they'll accept it, right? But there should always be a clause like, "Hey, if we have to back out, we'll come back and play, whatever. Sorry." Or if a club bounces you out for some reason,
Mm-hmm.
you should be able to recoup whatever they owed you, right? So those kind of things are in the agreement that you.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly recommend every musician get an agreement for every gig that they play for that reason.
Wow. I learned so much about all of the different nuances. And if I don't like speak to professionals like yourself or even like dive deep into it, because I get out and speak it too as well, and I would not have learned so much in regards to like just being a speaker myself, man. So thank you for sharing that knowledge too as well, man.
Sure. Appreciate it, man. I've always loved motivational speakers
Hmm.
from the time I was in my 20s. Zig Ziglar, Les Brown, Tony Robbins. I've attended them all. And that has always given me the ability to overcome adversity, is learning how to look inside yourself and just be the best person you can be.
That's right. That's right. Being a musician, man, what has been the most impactful or inspirational moment that you've been on stage where you kind of felt the energy from your crowd, where you know that your music was making a big impact on them? What was that for you, man?
Uh, you know, wow, there's been a lot. I'll probably say the one that was the biggest impact. I had a band, and we were opening for Huey Lewis and the News
Hmm.
at a big stadium, and we were the opening act, but we were not on the marquee. That was like a benefit thing,
Hmm.
so we were just like the local band that's opening for him. And man, it was sold out. We we played our music, but the energy of the audience was just filling us up. Like we're looking at each other like, is this really happening? Wow. I remember like during the last song, Real High Energy,
Hmm.
I literally went back on my back and started doing spins while I'm playing the bass. It's like, why did I do that? I don't know. And then I stood up, but we got a standing ovation from kids who didn't know who we were. And, uh, coming off stage, there's the Jefferson Starship. They're giving us high fives. I'm like, this is why I'm doing this. Yes, I want more. So that energy is what I'm talking about, is like it can fill you up and just make you, do more than you're even thinking you're able to do.
And that's what's up, man. I do love the fact when people like yourself is channeling that energy, because I just find that you convey such a connecting message, man. I think of, like, I went to a Zach Brown concert, and I've never heard Zach Brown, never anything. I just was given some tickets to go to check out the concert, and
Yeah,
this my first time hearing him and first time seeing him perform. Now I have Zach Brown albums at my house because I love the music and the energy that he was performing, and definitely as a veteran, he created a song for us veterans too as well, man. And I was like, oh, I really like this guy, because it even went deeper than the music. I saw that what he how much appreciation he had for the veteran community, man. So it's so amazing, I guess, when you think of like performers and things like that, they could connect with you in so many different ways.
absolutely. I love that fact. And by the way, thank you for serving, Michael. I always have a very soft heart for veterans. I actually worked for a veteran-owned business for
Hmm.
a while. We stay in touch every day, actually. And, uh, you know, having the opportunity to see um, diversity in not just people's backgrounds, but also in music, you're exposed to a whole lot of different genres,
Hmm.
and that's where I kind of love the music business, is that you can be inspired by something that you had no idea was going to happen. But the vibration, the sound is what moves us. And we resonate with that.
That's right, man. So I was looking at your website, and I seen that you had some albums out there. Can you tell our audience about this album here that you created, and what can they expect if they was to go out and pick up this album, Crazy
Okay.
World?
Yeah. So Crazy World's actually a single.
Hmm.
And that came out, that was the first single I put out after my Genealogy album.
Hmm.
Um, this is the one, you notice the trees on there?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was actually a picture I took when I was in Nicaragua.
Hmm.
And I just thought, boy, it's a crazy world. But this was during a time years ago when we were going through a lot of, let's say, crazy times. I won't get into different categories, but lots of crazy things were happening in the world.
Hmm.
And I wrote that song as kind of like a, hey, this is what's happening, but there somebody out there that's going to be with me to
Mm.
go through this crazy time.
Mm.
Actually, that was written for that person. So really it's kind of a looking at what's happening today, but I'm happy to have somebody here with me to go through it together.
Definitely, man. I like that. I like the connection with that too as well.
Yeah.
Then I noticed you had this other single here, and it says "Cool." Can you tell us about this song?
That's the name of the song. And I wrote that song just kind of like to tell a story
Mhm.
of, the word cool gets used a lot.
Yeah.
And I applied it to, let's see, you see somebody in the room, they look cool, and then they come up to you and like, hey, you're pretty cool too. That's what it's about, basically. So, two people meeting each other and finding each other cool.
Yeah, that's what's up, man.
Yeah.
So, in regards to some upcoming projects or collaborations, what are you most excited about in regards to like where you're at now in the music industry, man?
So thank you for asking. Actually, over this industry has changed a lot. Monetarily, it's never been in favor of the musician. Okay, it's always been the record companies make more money, musicians. That's why the term "starving musicians" comes
Yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah.
It's true, but what happened was I mentioned I had a couple of bands in the '80s.
Mm-hmm.
Over the last few years, actually since the time I put out my album, I started looking at other ways to make money in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found was the opportunities were to be able to put your songs on TV, film, ads.
Mm-hmm.
They call those sync placements,
Mm-hmm.
sync licensing.
Right.
So I have been focusing on that
Mm.
heavily with not just my old songs, but during COVID, when I was recording Crazy World with my old producer from my former band in the 80s,
Mm-hmm.
because he had a Latin background. He knew how to make that stuff. That's why I went to him.
Mm-hmm.
It was shut down, right? Everything was shut down. And then I said, hey, do you still have those reel-to-reel master tapes from the band called The Make, where I was the lead singer and guitarist? He said, yeah. I go, you know what? Let's get the guys in here. Let's remaster those songs, put them out for the first time worldwide, because we can do that now
Right,
all by
right,
ourselves, right? Couldn't do it in the 80s
right.
unless you had a cassette tape. That's it. That's all we had, right? So we put it out and we have released it. And now we have interest from film and television
Mm,
music supervisors that want to use 80s music.
mm.
And it's like full circle. Like, thank goodness, finally, these songs are going to get some airplay.
I love it, man. I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
it.
Like 30 years later, it's coming back. Woohoo!
When you look back at your career, what would you say has been your most proudest moment in your life from like all of your accomplishments, man?
Ooh, I think I had a lot of support along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe sometimes at that time that support didn't pay off.
Mm-hmm.
But I think once I went solo and I was able to produce music that I really felt I had full control over,
Yeah.
that was really my proudest moment, was
Mhm.
putting out my solo album and then subsequently a few singles too.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
So, Gene, before we get ready to wrap up, man, I know that you've been on the path of this musical journey. For our listeners that's listening, to hear the path that you've been on, some of the setbacks that you have within the music industry, personally and professionally, what kind of lesson that you could have them take away from your story?
We all go through adversity,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's in relationships, whether it's family, whether it's health. I've always been a person that was glass half full, not glass half empty, because it's so easy to look at the negative side of things. And unfortunately, in human nature, we're drawn to like each other when we're, feeling down or whatever, join the pity party,
Right, right.
right? I've never subscribed to that.
Hmm.
I always wanted to be focused on the positivity and moving forward and not holding myself back.
Right.
So anybody who knows me knows that that's the way I am. It's just maybe that's just how I'm dialed in, but I don't know any other way, because I've had enough stuff happen to me health wise that I should have thrown in the towel years ago.
Mm.
But I'm still here, man. Here I am with you. I didn't plan that.
Man, it's been a pleasure to hear your story. Obviously, I know that the music industry is a tough industry to even make it or to be diligently consistent, because you see people come, you see people go. And for you to be on here to tell us your story and the journey that you've been on is truly inspirational, because it really shows me and tells me a lot in regards to myself, just to be disciplined and create the habits that I'm creating, to be consistent with what I'm creating, and just continue to inspire people and empower people just from hearing your story too as well, man. So thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you, Michael. I appreciate that, man. I appreciate you and what you're doing to show the world, you can overcome adversity.
Absolutely,
It's just,
man.
it's a mindset,
That it is. That it is. Hey, man, if anybody wanted to buy your album, if anybody wanted to get you on their podcast, if anybody wanted to bring you up on stage, to even come on stage and tell your story, man, how can they find you?
Okay, so I have a website, and my artist name, because my last name is really long. It's 13 letters. It's a Greek name, right? Orphanopoulos. That doesn't fit on a marquee. So my artist name is Gene, capital O, period. There's a couple of other Genos out there, but you can find me on all the social streaming platforms. And my website is geneo.rocks. I found that URL to be kind of cool. I didn't know anybody had got rocks. So that's my URL.
No, that is pretty cool. I've never seen that either, man, but that's pretty cool.
GoDaddy had it. I'm like, cool, I'll use that.
Hey, man, before we get out of here, man, is there any last things that you would like to share with our audience?
Listen, if anybody's listening to this podcast, it's because they're looking for overcoming adversity. And I'll just say, it is in the mind, and you have to be focused. Do the little things, one little day at a time, and keep yourself motivated. It will happen. The law of attraction, basically, put it out there, you'll get back what it is that you're looking for.
Gene, it's been a pleasure, man. Thank you so much, brother.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate you.
Likewise, man. Until next time, guys. God bless. Right. Bye-bye.
Ain't complain at all. Couple dollars in my pocket, no income and go. Been working on my body, getting healthier. Thank God for clarity.